Hey everyone, we have Alan Tatone and Bree Allison here with The Hunter and the Hippie.
And today is quite the episode, the random episode. We really go off on tangents. They just, as Alan says at the end, with allowing your thoughts to flow in your journal, we allow the conversation to flow and just go in every different direction. Everything from little thoughts on transportation in Europe to our distrust of the government to composting. So we hope you find some good nuggets here, regardless of the scattered topics.
And we hope you enjoy. And with that, we always will say huge thank you to our listeners, right? Because without you, we have nothing, right? We would just be speaking into the ether. Bree and I would still have these conversations because they're fun. But it's great to be able to put them out there. And the feedback that we get, I love. More and more people are coming up to me in person and like, oh, I listened to this episode and like wanting to talk about things. So please, like, we are approachable. Please talk to us. If you're far away, send us emails, texts if you have questions. We want to hear it. And again, thank you. Please make sure you're liking, subscribing, 5-star reviews, leaving written reviews on all of the ways that you listen, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. We're on all the channels. And then lastly, a huge thank you to Brianna Cote, who does our still photography, and Allison Band, Alllyson Band, for our intro and outro music. And with that, enjoy the episode. Good morning, Bree. How's it going?
It's going all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. We're just talking about storage and not physical storage, but storage on our computers and iPhones
and how they get you.
They do get you. I just had a problem, right? So we were talking about editing these podcasts and how much space they take up. But I just had like a brand new iPhone, an iPhone 13, something like that, and it was like 120 something gigs, 128 gigs, I don't know, something like that. And I record my workouts for my coach, and I kept getting these messages. But I also have 2 terabytes of iCloud space.
Yeah.
So a massive amount of storage for iCloud.
Yeah.
And I kept getting these messages that my storage was full on my phone. And it was the most annoying thing. And so before I went to Europe, I said, screw this. And I went and I got a new iPhone like a year later.
Yeah.
And I got the 200 and whatever gig iPhone.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I'm not going to be in Europe and like go to take a picture and it's like storage full or whatever.
Wait, did you look at where you can look at what the breakdown
is? Yeah. So like, it was like, right, like I have music because I don't just listen to Spotify. I'm still old school and I still have like music from like that I downloaded from Napster years ago.
Yeah.
But it was the most annoying thing. And so I was like deleting videos constantly. I would delete a ton of videos. And then the next day, it was like, your storage is full. And I didn't put anything else on there. It was the weirdest thing ever.
Did you, though, delete them from the mess? Did you email your coach or do you text your coach videos?
I email him. But now I started using Google Drive.
Okay. Yeah, because that was the thing that I was always surprised was when I would go to my storage and it would take me to large storage files.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it was everything attachments to text messages.
Yes. Yeah. So I had a few of those where it was like, delete these messages because they're big text messages.
Yeah.
Which is weird.
Yeah.
Why isn't that in the cloud?
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah. And now you're talking about right, like your computer, you were having issues with storage full with your computer.
Yeah, it's funny. It happened a while ago, and then it hasn't happened for some time. But then I
Mm-hmm.
updated my laptop, and so I
The
think what
operating
happens
system.
is the iOS gets larger and larger every time, and then it cuts into all of our storage space. So I feel like they should say when they sell you something that typically, like, I don't know how much an iOS, like how much storage iOS takes up,
Mm-hmm.
but that would be a really helpful information when you buy a phone or buy a laptop. Like,
100%.
I don't care how much total storage I have. I care how much storage I can actually use.
Yeah.
Like, it
Right.
doesn't, like, that's with the phone. Like, like when it started, like I think the first time I upgraded in a really long time, like I ended up getting a new phone. Was it this winter? Yeah, this winter. But I had gotten one like 4 years ago, and it
Mm-hmm.
had been a long time. And it was like 60 back in the like. Actually, I don't even remember how many gigabytes. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
But it was like pretty much 90% of my storage was like the iOS.
Operating system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? I literally can't save anything on my
Yeah.
phone. Like, this is
Yeah.
dumb. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and
It's
so
funny.
like, tell me usable storage. Like,
Mm-hmm.
don't BS me with like all these gigabytes that are useless because
Yeah.
you're.
Because we're gonna take them up,
Yeah.
right?
Oh.
It's funny because like I said, now I have like this 200 whatever gigabyte storage on my phone, and I remember like the first iPhones were like 8 GB and 16 gigabytes, and yeah, so we just need more. It's
Well, we're turning into digital hoarders instead of, well, we're both for some people, but
yeah,
I mean, I'm a digital hoarder for sure. And it's like,
100%.
I'm like, shoot, like, I don't know about this.
How many pictures do you have in your photo album?
Oh, I've never, like, I don't think I've really ever gone
48
through it.
48,000. It should tell you. You have an iPhone, right?
Yeah.
I have
Oh,
48,000
okay.
photos and videos in my recent photo album.
14,498.
Yeah. Yeah. I can guarantee that neither of us need that many. Like,
Yeah. But who has the time to go through and like
delete 48,000 photos?
Yeah, man, it makes me kind of miss the days of like a real camera or disposable cameras
Uh-huh.
because you were so selective in what you took a photo of. Maybe
Right.
a little less with
Yeah.
disposables because I definitely would develop them and have some like, what was this?
Yeah.
But maybe part of it's like you drop it and then it like takes a photo of like or it goes off in your purse and like backpack and
yeah, because
but
you only had 27 photos on those. I still remember it.
yeah. So you're like,
and you like look at the
don't.
counter, you're like, oh, I'm not taking a photo of that.
Yeah. And now we're like, everything, take a photo of everything.
And not only take a photo of everything, take 10 photos of the same thing so you make
Yeah.
sure you get the right one.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you 48,000 photos, 98% of those are probably duplicates.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
I bet I can cut that number in half.
I try to when I'm creating like video content, I actually try to when I'm like recording something, a video, if it's one I'm not going to use, I try to delete it right away because of that exact reason. I was like, oh, I don't want to have like, and then you also don't know which one you're going to use, and then you have to go back through. Oh, this stuff.
And I hate deleting photos because I feel like, oh, what if like I look at a photo today and it's not right? I'm like, oh, that's all right, and I delete that one. But then, like what I've done in the past is I'll look at like a group of photos and I'm like, oh, I don't like that one, and I'll heart a different one. I'll like put that in my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'll go back and look, and then I'm like, oh, I really like this other one now.
Yeah, but you wouldn't even know if you didn't have it, and
True.
you would be
True.
totally content.
True. You're right.
Like that's the whole thing with even just like minimalism when it comes to like physical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I lived in my CRV and I got rid of a bunch of stuff and then put out like stuff I wanted, things I wanted for when I had a permanent dwelling again,
Mm-hmm.
I put in storage. But I didn't access it. Was in Colorado and I was like all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And you would have them when we're like, oh man, like I wish I had this thing that I got rid of. And then you get over it and you're totally fine.
Yeah.
Or if you really need it, you get it again. And that's where, like, I guess with photos, like, you can't
But you
do
don't know
that. You
though
can't
either.
get it back. But it's, I don't know.
You don't know either though. Like to your point, right? Like I think it's a little different. Like with something useful versus like a duplicate of a photo where your face is like one way versus another. You don't know that you're missing that.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have the photo. You have a photo.
Yeah.
Versus like, you know, the shovel that you need and you're like, crap, I could really use that shovel right now.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's a big difference. And I'm noticing that too because I'm getting ready to sell the house in Erie, and I've been out of the house since the beginning of February, and I'm like, oh, I got to go over there and like pack up the rest of my shit, and I'm like, wait a second, I've lived without everything at the house for how long now?
Yeah.
I don't need any of that stuff.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Like I have everything that I need.
Yeah.
And so, this also, like, I think we'll talk a little bit about my trip to Europe, but backpacking through Europe, I had a 45-liter backpack and a little sling bag.
Yeah.
And that was it. And there were a few things that I would change in my packing. Like I had
what'd you do for shoes? Tell me what you did for shoes. Did we
right.
talk about it on the podcast or talk about it like off the podcast?
I don't remember.
The shoe dilemma.
The shoe dilemma. It was.
What did you take?
So the shoe dilemma caused me some problems.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I took. So I wore my Gore-Tex Trail Runners, which was perfect because.
That's perfect.
Yeah, because it actually rained like 80% of my trip.
Okay.
So having waterproof shoes when everything else was soaked was really nice.
Okay.
There were a few times like when I was like traveling like on a train or a plane where my feet would get hot.
Yeah, that's what I just immediately thought was like, oh, I would have had such sweaty feet.
So there were times where definitely I was that guy and I took my shoes off. I still had socks on, but yeah, they were definitely warm at times, but for most of the trip, they were perfect.
Yeah.
I took a pair of dress shoes, not like my nicest pair, but like a decent pair of dress shoes because I wanted, and I used them. I went out a handful of times, like dressed up. So, but they weren't like my best dress shoes, and when I put them in the bag, it was like folding them and crunching them and like shoving them in the bag. So it was definitely on the way home, I almost thought to myself, because my goal was not to acquire anything.
Yeah.
And I ended up acquiring like a t-shirt and a hoodie while I was gone. And that pushed the limits of my packing.
Okay.
I was full leaving. My goal was not to acquire anything, and adding the hoodie really made things tight. And I almost ditched the shoes. Like they're older shoes.
Yeah.
So on like my final leg, I was so sick of packing, and I'm like, okay. But I knew I needed flip flops right. Like you always need flip flops, right? Like whether it be like if you want to take a shower and right, like like a gym, a public place, flip flops are always good to have. Plus with jiu-jitsu, most of the time, you're wearing shoes off of the mats, and then you take them off
Mm-hmm.
when you get on the mats. And that was a problem. And so I ended up having to buy like flip-flops or slides.
Oh, you
And I
didn't
could,
bring flip-flops.
no,
Oh,
no, yeah.
oh no.
And the only ones that I could find, I was looking, I dealt without flip-flops for a while, for probably
Yeah.
like 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
like a week and a half. And finally I got to the point where like I needed them. And the only ones that I had been looking, I couldn't find just a cheap pair. The only ones that I could find were like these Nike slides that were like $40,
Mm-hmm.
and they were just like they were like comfortable, and I didn't need comfortable, and like so they had more cushion and they were thicker, and they just took up way too much space. So
Yeah.
uh so that was like those were the only shoes I brought. So the ones that I was wearing, the dress shoes, and then I ended up buying the Nike slides. And so I definitely can use, like, I need to revamp things for my packing. If I,
Mm-hmm.
when I do that again, I need just cheap flip flops, like the $2 pair from Walmart.
Yeah.
And then I brought too many pairs of pants,
Mm-hmm.
and so I could get rid of like probably like 2 pairs of pants.
Yeah.
And that would have gave me
How
a
many
lot of
pants did
space.
you bring?
I think 5 pairs of pants.
Yeah.
So jeans, 2 pairs of hiking pants, 2 pairs of sweats, so 6 pairs of pants, and then dress pants. So
Yeah.
6 pairs of pants.
Yeah.
Definitely could bring less pants,
Yeah.
and that would have freed up a lot of storage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even about like taking that storage up with like different stuff. Like I had the perfect amount of shirts. I'll probably use more socks, but it all ended
It
up
would have
working
been for
out.
your shoes, your sandals.
Yeah, yes. Mm-hmm. But what was really cool is I ended up getting these giant Ziploc bags that have a vacuum seal
Yeah.
and a hand pump.
Yeah.
And so you could hand pump these vacuum bags, and
Mm-hmm.
that it doesn't help with like weight, but it definitely helps with like volume,
Yeah.
and that made things pack way easier.
Yeah.
So that's like a huge. So I've tried packing cubes before, but these were like that was such a big help. Why are you laughing?
It's just funny. So I could pack more.
Yeah, right, right.
Doesn't fit in my bag now, but now
Yeah,
it will.
right.
Vacuum sealer.
So yeah, it ended up all working out and fitting.
Yeah.
By the end of my trip, I was so done carrying things on my back. I was so over just having everything that you own on your back.
Right, that doesn't sound like an elk hunter to me.
No, yeah, I was just so done, like walking around places, like visiting places with this
with
massive,
a heavy pack.
Yeah,
I just was so done walking around for days on end with a heavy pack.
Yeah, yeah. It was funny. Like a few people like tried lifting my pack. It was probably like 40 pounds, 45 pounds, which is pretty light, like relatively from like elk hunting. People are like, wow, this is heavy, and everything's in kilograms over there, so they speak in kilograms, and you're like, I don't know that.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, how heavy is this? I'm like, I have no clue. They're like, oh, like 3 kilograms, and I'm like, that sounds wrong, but
yeah,
I know it's wrong. But the kilograms I get right, it's like 2.2. But
yeah, something like that.
When you start talking Celsius to me, that's when you lose me.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, it's like 6 degrees Celsius. Okay, that means nothing. Do I put on pants or shorts?
Yeah.
Is it winter out or summer?
And we're like the only country that doesn't
100%.
goes on, is not on the metric system.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. But yeah, so all of that to say, how did we get on this topic?
Minimal, getting rid of, you were able to travel with very, I think traveling in general makes you realize how little you actually need.
Yep.
Um,
And like even of the stuff that I had, I could do a better job because I used 2 of those Ziploc bags.
okay.
What I started to figure out later on into the trip is I could make it work to where I only need to open one of those Ziploc bags every time I open my pack.
Mm,
Because at first it was like, oh, this is in this bag and this is in that bag. And then I figured out ways to um, like prepare for the following days.
mm,
So this way I would just pull one bag out. And it wasn't that big of a deal to have to open both bags and then reseal them, but just like for me, like efficiencies
yeah.
and not having to like repack both of these bags. And but yeah, it was nice just knowing like, oh, this is all I need. This is all I
Yeah.
have. And it's perfect.
Yeah.
And there was never really a point where it was like, there was a point where it was like, that was the other thing. I acquired a rain jacket.
Mm,
I didn't bring a rain jacket. I bought a puffy,
yeah.
and I thought the puffy would totally work.
Mm,
And the puffy did not work because it rained. I was
yeah.
dripping wet a good part of the trip, right?
Yeah.
And then finally I was like, I splurged on a rain jacket.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course it stopped raining.
A win-win.
Yeah.
If it rained, you had your rain jacket.
Yeah.
If not, you didn't have to deal with the rain.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was a good learning experience with that.
Yeah. It's funny. Andy, when we were going somewhere, I was kind of poking at him and it's not like he was packing a lot, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying this because his response was like, I'm not at the point where I can wear the same thing every day like you. And I was like, okay. So like for me, packing is super easy because I'll wear the same thing every day. I wear the same thing every day here when I have access to like all my clothes.
Right.
Like I'll wear the same thing a few days, like wear that through and then okay, switch the uniform. But yeah, it's so I like to I giggle a little hearing people and what they take.
Yeah. Well, what's really funny is when in September of last year, I went to Milwaukee to visit my friends Josh and Megan, and I brought 2 suitcases.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
How long were you there for?
Like 5 days.
Yeah.
And I like brought so much stuff, and that's like how I'm used to traveling is I bring everything because I want options, and I don't know what I'm gonna want to wear. Right, like
I don't want options. Like when there's this restaurant that we went to dessert there, they have like 50 dessert options, but
the place that
Alpine Inn. Yeah. So for dinner it's filet mignon, bacon wrapped, and you choose your size. That's and then they do have like some I don't know. I think they have a vegetarian option, but like a pasta or something, but I love that place because I go in and I'm like small, like medium, cooked medium, and that's it. Like I don't have to, like I love like traveling. You should make that decision before, and then if I don't like what I chose, doesn't matter.
You're stuck with it.
Don't give me the options. Just deal, like it's that's freaking life, man. You just have to deal with it anyway. You're dealing with other stuff.
Yeah, for sure. and so that's what I did this trip is I cut down drastically. And so I ended up meeting Josh and Megan in Estonia.
Okay.
And when I showed up with just the backpack and the sling bag, they were like, it was funny. Their response was so different. They're like, wait, you come to Milwaukee for 4 or 5 days and you have all that and you got down to that for an undetermined length of time trip around the world. And I'm like, just sucked it up and figured it out.
Yeah.
And it's funny when I look back at pictures, like my pictures are all the same t-shirts, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, whatever. But for me, I'm like, damn, I wish I had different t-shirts on.
Oh my God. That would not even cross my mind.
It looks like I have the same clothes on, which I do.
So that's where I steered away from this because I actually got a few free shirts a couple years ago. But I used to only I'd have a black tank top, a black t-shirt, and a black long sleeve.
And that's it.
And I would have like two of the same black t-shirt. And then I had like one black long sleeve. And I might have just had one tank top.
Mm-hmm.
And I would depend on the weather. I would wear one of those and whatever pants, And it was so freeing because it was one less like decision to occupy my mind every day. Yeah. And then now that I have color in my wardrobe, it hasn't really like added. I'm like, okay, I'm going to grab this, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I love that idea of, like you could even have 5 of the same black t-shirts, right? Like if you want to wear a clean one every single day.
It's not the clean that matters.
No, I know. Yeah. But I don't want that choice. Like I know black looks good. It's easy. It goes with everything. And so that's why I love it. I'm like, I know it's going to be good. I don't have to deal with like, oh, does this color look good with this color? Or like, how does it look on me? Like, nope.
They say like that's why like Mark Zuckerberg wears like the turtleneck or whatever. Steve Jobs always wore like the turtleneck. Mark Zuckerberg wears like the t-shirt.
Yeah.
It like removes a decision from your life.
Yeah.
It takes up energy.
Yeah, we're making micro decisions like every moment.
I don't know. There might be something to it, but I don't feel like choosing the t-shirt that I want to wear is exhausting.
That's great. But then you have regrets. You're sitting with regrets when you look at your photo and you say, man, I really wish I had brought different t-shirts.
But I would be saying that if they were all black, if everyone, that would be even worse. If every single picture I was in just a black plain t-shirt.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, no. For you, yes, but for me, no.
It's shifting. Yeah. It's just a shift in mentality.
It is, for real.
That's why, honestly, the black is because I'm like, I know it'll look good. Like,
yeah, it's easy. Looks good.
Black looks good. Whatever. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, it is funny. I love it. I love I also reflect on who I was ages ago and how much clothing I had. And how I was really into fashion and things like that. And I'm just like, whoa. Like, but there was nothing wrong with that person. It's just like, so does not resonate with me anymore.
100%.
But.
Yeah. And even with like jujitsu stuff's pretty easy to pack, but then it's like bringing different, oh, but I want to wear this, or I want to wear that rash guard, or it's a way to express yourself.
Yeah. So. I get that. I don't wear the same running clothes for a week straight like I do my everyday clothes. Just
that's good.
For the record.
That's good. But
I have also, like a week's worth of running clothes, so I can like wear something fresh every time I run and then wash it. But
yeah, like yes and no, right? Like if you're home and you have that luxury, that's because it is a luxury. Because when you're out, when like having options for running clothes, like having changes that aren't dirty, because when you're out hunting, I don't know for you, but I have 2 pairs of socks when I'm out hunting.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'll be out in the field for 10 days in 2 pairs of socks.
Yeah.
And right, like you.
Oh, in the same clothes. Like I don't.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I have
one. I have one shirt and 1 pair of pants when I hunt.
Yeah. I do bring a loose fitting base layer as my pajama pants that I won't wear.
Same.
I won't wear
to hunt.
to hunt in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe I'll wear a different shirt to bed. Like I'll put a really lightweight tank top or something.
Yeah.
But then a lot of times if it's cold out, I'm putting on
The other
my
stuff.
layers.
Mm.
You know, I'm putting all that on in the sleeping bag anyway. But
Yeah, same. I absolutely bring a separate set of pajamas to sleep in when I'm out in the field, just because it feels clean. That I'm not like sweating in and moving around in. But
and I will say I do take the luxury. I bring camp shoes. I like
shoes or like I bring chacos.
I have slippers.
Okay.
They're outdoor slippers. They're like insulated with tread on the bottom. And I bring those because I take my shoes off and socks off immediately. Like I don't wear socks. I'm like barefoot. So
Agreed. Same.
Yeah. So that is something I'm like, I'll carry the extra weight. I don't care.
Yep. Yeah, there's definitely those luxury items that you choose and you're like, yep. Like my friends make fun of me for bringing pajamas. And I'm like, it's going to help me sleep. So
yeah,
I'll carry the weight.
And then, like the shoe thing is for me, like if I'm getting up, like coming in and out of the tent, things like that, like it's so like I get to just slip them on. Like there is like an efficiency aspect of it versus if I wake up and I need to go to the bathroom and it's middle of the night.
You have to put your boots on?
Put your boots on? Like that.
That's awful. That's terrible.
Because I'm going to become more awake than I would if I just like slip my shoes on, walk out and go pee. But you hold out on that pee.
Oh, you hold out so long. You hold out it often. It has to be way longer than you should for like.
Well, you're testing if you can fall back asleep. You're like, is this pee serious?
Yes.
Or am I going to be able to fall back asleep and be able to pee when I'm going to wake up in the morning?
Then you end up staying up longer fighting that. If you were just go up and go pee.
Sometimes I do fall asleep. Sometimes I'm like, okay.
And it's funny because it's like the battle of it's cold out there.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah, I don't want to get up. And then like, because it's dark, then like you're operating all based on headlamp and like operating on headlamp isn't fun.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That actually happened in the comfort of my own home. I usually don't wake up to have to pee until the morning. And last night I was lying there like, go away. No. And I was like, I gotta get up.
When that happens for me, I don't turn on any lights. Like,
no.
It is just, and like my eyes closed. Like I tell myself, stay asleep. Do not wake up.
Yeah. No, totally. It's
the
funny.
worst is that in like traveling, because that would I don't know if you saw my Instagram. This one place that I stayed in Garmisch in Germany in the Bavarian Alps.
Okay.
It was a beautiful Airbnb with a beautiful view, except it was like in like the loft space.
Yeah.
And so you had like the ceilings, and the ceilings would come down around the edges of the apartment. And in the reviews, it even like multiple people wrote like low ceilings, watch out.
Okay, that's good.
And and these ceilings were really low.
Yeah.
I don't know if I showed like the shower picture. Like I took a picture of me standing in the shower. The way the toilet bowl was situated, it was right against a really low ceiling.
Yeah.
And I started keeping a counter, low ceilings versus Alan's head.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting to like, I don't know, 13 or 16 hits.
Oh boy.
But one of them was I got up in the middle of the night to go pee and again, dark. I don't know the place.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I'm remembering like, all right, low ceilings. Remember there's low ceilings. And I remember to like, because they're the way the beds were, they put the beds at the edges,
Yeah.
so you're under the lowest part of the ceiling. So if you tried standing straight up, you're gonna hit your head.
Yeah.
So I remembered like I rolled out of the bed and like ducked, and then I stood up, and I go to the bathroom, and I get to the bathroom, and I go to like look down, and the way the toilet, you have to see the picture, but the way the toilet was, it was right at this low ceiling. And I moved my head forward and wham, slammed my head right into the ceiling.
Oh.
And immediately I like picked my head up and I'm like, oh, and I brought my head back down and hit the ceiling a second time.
Twofer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God. Like, yeah, it was awful.
Oh my gosh.
And that's the
Well,
crazy.
if you would have not packed those extra pants, you could have brought a helmet and then all would have been okay.
Yeah.
Who knew you needed a helmet for your trip?
Mm-hmm. Everything. So the shower was the worst. I hit my head. I think it was like 8 times in the shower, 6 or 8 times in the shower.
Yeah.
When you see this picture, you understand why. The shower, the space had to have been, I don't know, maybe 5 feet tall,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm 6 foot. And
Yeah.
like I have a picture of me, and I'm standing in the shower like this.
Mm-hmm.
And then the space of the shower was tiny too. So like trying to close the door of the shower was really hard as well. Everything in Europe is really small, including the coffee.
Oh yeah, all the houses when you like there's this show House Hunters, and anytime Americans go over to Europe, they always complain about how small things are, or like the layout, because the bathrooms a lot of times will be like separated. And there's usually the laundry is usually in the kitchen. A lot of times it's just a washer, not a dryer.
No dryers in Europe.
Yeah. Yeah, everything is a lot smaller for sure.
Mm-hmm. And the elevators too. I got into a couple of elevators with my massive pack on.
Yeah.
There was one elevator I got into, no one else could have fit in it.
Yeah.
Absolutely no one else could have fit in it. There was one I got into where I was like, oh man, if anyone else gets in this, it's going to be tight. And then the day I was checking out, 2 people got in with me. Okay. And I'm like, I could feel like my bag was pushed up against the back of the elevator, and like the people are right here, right next to me. Yeah, everything is definitely, it's like the opposite of Texas.
Yeah,
it's smaller in Europe.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting, like the Dutch. So part of why New York was created up the way it is because it was founded by the Dutch. And in the Netherlands, I don't know if this is still true, but they used to be taxed on the width of the building. And so the way they built was up, like narrow and up. But the reason for that was so that they condensed all the humans into like city centers and had the open space in between towns. So you go between towns and there's all this greenery, the classic Dutch windmills, all of that. And so like there's something really interesting, like I can get down behind like that idea. Like I don't want to be in a dense city. Like give me a plot of land with no one around me. Which I would say potentially still preserves having that open space. Right.
Yeah.
But it makes a lot of it makes a lot of sense even from an efficiency standpoint of
for sure,
like access.
Yeah. Well, and that does make a lot of sense, because when you look at like cities like Dallas or Phoenix, these big sprawling cities, you drive forever and you can't get out of the city.
Yeah. Well, even think about Colorado. Suburbia, I think, is probably one of the worst things if we want to talk about.
Yeah.
Just because you're not building up, so you're building out. And now, like every time I go back to Colorado, more open space is filled in.
Yeah.
With houses. And we wonder why it's getting so hot in town. It's like, well, it's all cement and pavement.
Yep.
It's like, well, the earth not only absorbs the heat, but it also creates, right, that can create more moisture. That whole process becomes eliminated when it's filled with just streets and
Concrete
pavement
and
and houses and
steel buildings and
hmm
yeah, for sure.
like it's tender. I remember seeing something like it's a 10-degree difference when you go to an area that's covered in pavement, cement, concrete, whatever, and um,
I
open
believe it.
space.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
believe it. And even where like even the less amount of stuff that you get,
hmm
right? Because when you're in Phoenix, especially in the summer,
Yeah.
like if you're in the city, like the main part of the city, it's freaking hot, 110, 115 degrees. And you just go out to like Fountain Hills,
hmm
which is still developed and you still have people living there, but it is less developed and less concrete, and like they use more of nature. Like a
hmm
lot of their paths and sidewalks are like gravel. Um, it is the elevation doesn't change a whole lot. I think it changes a little bit, but not a whole lot.
Mm.
And but it is substantially cooler.
Yeah.
It's a good 5 to 10 degrees cooler just from that,
hmm
which is it is interesting. Also, I learned this today, or not today, but this week recently. I was talking with Ganesh.
hmm
We were talking about forest fires because
Alberta is on
yeah,
fire.
Alberta is on fire, and we're all feeling the effects of it. You especially. I didn't realize it until we actually looked at the smoke map,
Oh yeah, it's been
and
bad.
yeah, like I thought it was bad here. We like you can't see the Front Range right now,
hmm
but apparently like North Dakota, South Dakota, you guys have it rough.
Yeah, it's
And
gotten quite a bit better. Last week was really bad on Wednesday and Thursday. I was supposed to do my like peak week long run on Friday,
mm-hmm,
but I knew I was going to start early and I knew I had to make that decision Thursday
mm-hmm,
if I would run. And I was like, I can't run for 10 hours breathing if the air
right,
is not better. It ended up actually Friday got better and then the weekend got worse again. But
mm-hmm,
um it was yeah, it was really, really bad here.
yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We were starting to get better.
Mm-hmm.
Like initially it was bad, and then it got better. You could start to see the Front Range, and then I was driving to the yoga studio yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and again the Front Range was gone. I was like, holy shit, it's wild. And when you look at the smoke map, it's affecting the entire country,
Yeah.
right? Like the entire like northern northeast part of the country. So
Yeah. I
New
think it's
York,
making it over to
Maine,
Europe. There's like the
really,
jet stream is carrying, yeah, it's the jet stream is like
it's
carrying it across.
wouldn't be
But
surprising.
yeah, wild.
Yeah.
But
So why I brought that up is we as a society have gotten richer, and
mhm,
therefore we're building more in forests in the middle of nowhere. We're expanding our cities, and so therefore when these fires happen, more damage is done, right?
mhm,
So it seems like a bigger deal, right? It is a bigger deal because right, like we've gotten richer and therefore we've built more,
mhm,
and right, so now damage costs go up higher.
mhm,
And over the last 200 years, the number of forest fires actually hasn't changed a whole lot.
mhm.
Whereas like we're being told that it has, and it actually hasn't. When you look at the data, for the last 200 years, fires have happened.
Well, fires have to happen.
100% they do.
It's part of it's
The
actually
rejuvenation.
how the forest survives is through that
Mm-hmm.
process.
Yeah.
And that's why they do prescribe burns.
Mm-hmm.
But part of the prescribed burns is because the forest needs to burn.
Yep.
But now that we've built in it, we won't allow it to naturally burn
Mm-hmm.
because humans are in it and we're part of the ecosystem. So I'm not
100%.
like pooping on us. Like we have to find a solution that involves
Yes.
humans, and that means prescribed burns because then it's going to burn anyway.
Right. Yeah, and it goes back to what I said on the last episode, right? Like we need to
Yeah.
quit demonizing things,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like we need to quit being this hard for and hard against things,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is a human problem. We're
Mm-hmm.
not going away,
Yeah.
right? And like let's quit being like pointing the finger and being like this is the right. Like yeah, no, we're right. These are sort of good problems to have when you really think about it, right? Like we as a society have gotten richer. We build more, right? More exists because of that. And because of that, technology has gotten better. And because of that, we can actually repair quicker and return quicker.
Mm-hmm.
And we can do things like prescribe burns and we can come up with solutions. So while it's a human problem, there's also now human solutions for these things.
Mm-hmm.
So
I my one area that I will struggle with is just the amount of waste and trash that we create.
yeah.
That is just see I see that as above, and I'm no exception. I'm not zero waste in my
Yeah.
household, but um I feel like that is a big, from an environmental standpoint, is probably one of our most destructive
Mm-hmm.
elements because we have nowhere to put it.
Yeah.
And the amount of, even just right when you think about the evolution of recycling, we started to send our recycling out, which is using more energy to ship it to China, which no longer takes it, then it gets shipped to India. Like why would we recycle if that's the process that it takes? The
Right.
energy used is actually eliminating the benefits of it.
Mm-hmm.
But waste is that's a one I personally can't see the flip side to.
Yeah.
And I know there
Well,
is, and I'm not, like I'm not gonna.
I mean, I don't know if there's a flip side to waste, right? But it is a problem that we've created through
Mhm.
this feeling of like we need more, we need bigger, we need better, right? My iPhone can't have 8 gigabytes of storage; it needs 16. No, it
Mhm.
needs 120. No, it needs 200 and whatever. And and then we just start like oh, this iPhone's garbage, we throw it away,
Mhm.
right? And oh, this is garbage, we just throw it away.
It's the it's like that. It's that pushing the economy,
Mm-hmm.
right? More people spending money, they'll say creates more jobs because there's
Mm-hmm.
more money circulating. Like I guess maybe that's where the more waste we're creating means the more people are making money to, but
But
I think it's,
is that necessary?
no, I think it's unconscious consumption. Like again,
Yeah.
it's
Mm-hmm.
not, we're not consuming
Yeah,
in a level that we can keep up with.
for sure.
Like I don't think that's the way. I think the economy can function in different ways and be successful in different ways
Mm-hmm.
than more.
And how do we? Well, like I know they're looking at how to get rid of the waste, but and I don't know the numbers for this, but it feels like we're creating more waste at a faster pace than we're getting rid of or managing
Mm-hmm.
our waste properly. And what's funny is I was in the waste industry for years, and when you think about recycling, when you think about composting, all this, a lot of it is horseshit. A lot
Mm-hmm.
of it is you're being fed nonsense that isn't true. Um, right, like for a while, I don't know if this is still the case in Boulder County or in the
Mm-hmm.
city of Boulder. Restaurants were required by the city, regulated by the city, to compost.
Mm-hmm.
There was not a compost facility to
Mm-hmm.
handle that. So you have restaurants who are being regulated to compost, which means that you have now waste providers that have to come in and pick up that compost in a
Mm-hmm.
separate bin, in a separate truck, and then they just take it to the landfill and dump it.
Oh, they weren't even taking it.
No,
Okay.
because there was nowhere to take it to. There was no composting facility.
Mm.
And then when they wanted to build a composting facility, this was just a few years ago. They wanted to build one in Erie.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this goes to the not in my backyard thing, right? Like
Yeah.
everyone wants this until all of a sudden it's in their backyard. And because this composting facility, like the smell and all the things that it brings,
Mm-hmm.
all the negatives that it brings, all of a sudden everyone didn't want this composting facility.
Yeah.
So it's right, double-edged sword, it's whatever you want to call it, right? Like there's pros and cons to all of these things. And but yeah, like a lot of it sometimes is a facade. It's this
Mm-hmm.
way to recycling, oftentimes like we send our stuff to China and India, and is it really being recycled? Right? What do those recycling facilities look like? What do those plants do? What are they doing to the environment?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, like we're shipping waste recycle to other countries. How much fuel and energy
Mm-hmm.
are we using? Is it
Yeah.
worth it?
Well, and it's like China doesn't take our recycling anymore. They like maxed out, and
Mm-hmm.
so then, and this is like I'm not an expert on this, so I'm very open to anyone saying otherwise. But I
Same.
had seen this documentary around like plastic, and it was then sent to India, and then they're just burning it, and then the people who live in those towns are inhaling that smoke with
Mm-hmm.
it's pretty, we're so disconnected from that process, but
Again,
we're
not in
doing
my
it.
backyard.
Look at I'm recycling this, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's, and we can't be experts on everything, so I understand. I think it's unfortunate because I feel like there should be a responsibility of transparency,
Mm-hmm.
that just doesn't exist anymore
Yeah.
for anything. I mean, we learned that in the pandemic, that transparency is not, uh, is or it's preferred to not be transparency, whatever the
Mm-hmm.
opposite of transparency is.
Yeah.
um but yeah, it's like I when you say that story about the composting, it makes me think their approach was almost like, we're going to get everyone to require everyone to compost, and then we're going to use that as leverage for building a composting facility versus building the composting facility and then
Mm-hmm.
requiring everyone to do it, because then they
Mm-hmm.
could come back and say, well, we have all this compost coming through and we need a place for it.
Mm-hmm.
So they did like step 2 before step 1, and it backfired on them,
Yep.
you know.
Yep. 100%.
But
And it's the same. We're seeing it with electric cars,
mm-hmm.
right? Like California's requiring electric vehicles, but now they're having all sorts of issues with their grid and rolling blackouts and right, like
Well, and are we creating more waste, like getting rid of a car before it's completed
mm-hmm.
its life cycle? Like, is that good?
Mm-hmm.
But we're also designed, like, it come back to Europe, right? The way that our cities are designed, um, require a lot of vehicles, everyone to have a vehicle, which is not. And when you build in, like in Europe, right, you build those city centers, and then you have the train systems, the planes, trains, planes, automobiles.
Such a great movie.
Yeah, there's more
That's
ability to not have a car.
mm-hmm. That's the one thing we've done so wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The transportation over there is incredible.
Yeah.
Just how easy and how accessible it is to get anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like you want to get to the middle of nowhere, there is a train to another train to a bus that will get you there.
Mm-hmm.
And it is so convenient. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wow, why can't I take a train to these other places. Did we talk about this on the last episode?
I think we might have talked
But like,
about it after. I
yeah.
can't remember. Because my whole thing was like the United States is so
So
huge.
yes,
Like, so like within a country in Europe, how small that country is
for sure.
versus trying to span, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the length of the United States. Like that makes it a bit more challenging because we do have a lot of flight. I mean, the airline industry is a hot mess, I think,
And that,
recently, but it's we do have a lot of flight travel.
but the cost of flight travel has just exponentially gone up, and in Europe it's not as expensive either.
Mm-hmm.
That's the wild thing about flight travel. It's like, what are we doing here? Because there,
So why do you think it's so? We bought out. They got bailed out again
mm-hmm.
with the pandemic. Like
Mm-hmm.
where that money isn't out of nowhere. So
No.
it's like, I mean, and I can't. I mean, Europe experience, that's a world experience
For sure.
where that was like travel was shut down. So I can't speak to that and correlation.
But I don't think everyone started printing money the way that we did.
Mm,
I could be wrong, but
yeah. 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 That's what I loved when I lived in the Netherlands. Like the coolest thing was everyone there bikes everywhere. Like their main train station has these like double decker bike ports.
that's cool.
Yeah. So you put your bike in and you lift it up, and then someone can put their bike underneath, and they're like kind of staggered.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many. It's wild how many bikes are at those stations. But it's,
I got hit by a bike in Munich.
Oh yeah.
Because I was walking in the bike lane.
Oh yeah.
And I had no clue. So it's not like our bike. Well, I don't, right. Like this is just in Munich, right? Or like this part of Munich that I was in. The bike lane is on the sidewalk, not on the street.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a cobblestone section of sidewalk, which is where you walk.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a smooth section of sidewalk, which is where the bike lane is.
Yeah.
And so I was just moseying on through the bike lane. And this one guy is a dick. Like, he could have moved out of the way.
Yeah.
And he totally fucking hit me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was just like, are you for real? And it was funny. It was like right when I got to Munich. And I was over being in cities. I just wanted to get out of cities. And that happened. And I was just like, are you kidding me right now?
I'm done.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I guess that's a bike lane.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this is a thing in Europe. And apparently my friend who's from Denmark, he said Copenhagen in the summer is just tourists just standing in bike lanes. It's like a plague.
Yeah.
So in Amsterdam or the Netherlands, is that, are the bike lanes in the street or are they on the sidewalk?
Well, it just depends. Some areas of the city center aren't even accessible by car.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there won't even be a street because they have all the bike lights. You know, it's every signal light usually has if there is a street, there's the car light, but also the bike signal light.
Right.
But it varies. So sometimes it would be part of the sidewalk. Sometimes it goes beside the street. Sometimes it will have like which we have a lot or not a lot, we have in the US where it's like along the street, but then there's a divider, something to separate it. Yep. But like in Utrecht where I lived, there's parts that are only accessible by bike.
Where'd you live?
In Utrecht.
Okay.
Where is that? It's now I can't remember. South of it, 30 minutes from Amsterdam. Okay. I think it's south. It's like the third largest city in the Netherlands. Den Haag is Amsterdam, Den Haag, and then Utrecht. Mm-hmm. But
why'd you live there?
I played water polo over there. So I played for a team out of Utrecht after college. Well, a couple years out of college.
That's
So,
cool.
yeah. But it's interesting that's how it was designed, how it came. I mean, look at New York City. Again, it was designed by the Dutch. It was designed with that mentality of build up. Public transportation is, I mean, it's nasty now.
It's one of the best though
but it
in the
is one
country.
of, right?
It's
Chicago's
gross.
great. Like
It is gross,
any
but
city that is densely designed
and
does
it's
have.
decent. Yeah, it's decent from like you can get as far as I believe like Washington D.C. too. Like so, like that section from like Connecticut down to Washington D.C. Like Philly, everything in between. Like it's decent. Like you can definitely get through those areas, but that's it. If you don't live there, right? It's not an option. Like even California, like, California is known for its traffic. Their public transportation is garbage. If you ride public transportation in a big city like Denver, Phoenix,
I heard actually LA, riding the bus in LA is super clean because no one's on the bus.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. And that's what I was just going to say is if you're on a bus in Phoenix or Denver, you're a crackhead.
I used to ride the bus. I would take the bus from Louisville. I'd throw my bike on it and that's how I would go to Denver. I hated driving in Denver. I hated dealing with parking. I just hated driving through there. So I would throw my bike on the bus and take the bus from Louisville into Denver. And then when I was in Denver, I'd cruise around on my bike. Yeah. I think I've used some of
But who was on the bus with you?
No, all sorts of people.
Yeah.
You get in faster because they actually get to use their own lane. They're not sitting in the traffic. So that was the other benefit of like, if I knew I could get into town faster than sitting in traffic. Yeah.
I can't speak to Denver because I haven't ridden public transportation. But Phoenix, I've ridden public transportation.
Yeah.
It is not a good crowd.
Yeah.
And maybe it's getting better, but
well, maybe Denver is getting worse. Like I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I haven't been there for 4 years or so.
And I think it's sadly just part of the growing pains, like because right, like I think we all are starting to see the benefits of like what Europe has. But you can't just make it happen. Right? Like that's been decades of work for them to have the trains and planes and automobiles that they have.
Well, and it was built like it's probably, I don't know, close to impossible to restructure than it is to build from that way when you have a clean canvas to build. Absolutely. So, and that's how they built versus if we tried to implement anything in Phoenix or LA, it's just much more challenging. And then again, the why Europe can have those access from like a small town, right? Is because there's nothing, and then a little town. And nothing, a little town. Whereas here, all of our nothings in between are where people live.
Yep.
And so there's not a way to kind of consolidate people to jump on public transportation at this one spot to then get to this one other spot.
Yeah. But it's an interesting problem.
Yeah. So I don't know. I like being able to, self-driving cars. We'll see what happens. I don't know.
There's a lot with like these self-driving cars that, I mean, AI and all this stuff is really getting freaky. My friend, I had dinner with my friends the other night, and she runs distribution centers for a company that she works for,
Yeah.
and they are like 95% automated. And
Mm.
we're talking robots, like legit, like creepy looking robots, like going and like picking stuff off of shelves and like moving them, and self-driving vehicles on the property. They're testing over the road
Yeah.
transportation, self-driving. So we'll see. It's
Oh.
it's a little creepy. It's definitely like Terminator.
I see the positive, but I
Uh-huh.
don't think it will be used for. So, like, the positive of automating things frees people up to do things that machines currently can't do.
Yeah.
But I actually think it's just freeing people up to like further drain their minds
Yeah.
because they're being sucked dry on social media. And
I was gonna say it frees you up for more time on social media.
yeah, I mean, that's the part that is unfortunate about it. And it's like, I think there could be good intention, right, for people to explore the arts and these other, um, but even they say like the best poetry was like Chat GPT or something put together.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what that headline was, but um,
Have you
yeah,
played around with ChatGPT
I've used it twice, I think.
for like business, for like marketing?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, I need a name for this. One of them I didn't even end up using any of their suggestions, but the other one was helpful.
It's wild how good that is. We
Mm.
I've used it for like marketing, like typing like a marketing email.
Mm-hmm.
I have a group chat with some friends. We mess around using it, replying to each other.
Yeah,
We'll like say hi to Bree for me, and
yeah,
then it like writes this whole thing about just saying hi to you.
yeah.
Um, uh, and then I'm going to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Globetrotters camp
Mm-hmm.
Sunday in Maine, and we're doing actually when this episode comes out it'll be past, but we're doing a pro wrestling event,
Yeah.
and we're using ChatGPT to create our characters and
Oh,
like the script of it, and yeah, it's really interesting. So yeah, I'm not going to give any of it away
yeah.
right now, but it is wild, like the characters that are coming out of it. The other fun thing that we're using it for, and like again, it's right, like we can't demonize it because it does have some pretty cool benefits that we can use it for. And I
Mm-hmm.
think about like this didn't exist a few months ago,
Mm-hmm.
or it wasn't accessible to the public a few months ago.
Yeah.
So that's what's going to be interesting, right? To your point, in like how are we going to use this? But we do at the beginning of every camp, we do what they call speed dating,
Mm-hmm.
because right there's like 150, 200 people at these camps.
Yeah.
So you go through for like a minute and you just talk to people and just
Mm-hmm.
to like meet people, get a good initial meeting, especially if you've never been there and you don't know anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So me and my friend, the speed dating thing, it gets old after you do if you've done it a few times.
Mm-hmm.
So what we decided to do is we were going to write questions for each other, and you don't get to look at the question
Mm-hmm.
until you're standing in front of a person. You pull it out and you open it. You have to ask the question,
Okay.
and right, like there's no limit on what we can write in the question. So it's going to be really funny and awkward. Uh, but we shared this with the guy who runs the camps, and he's like, this is brilliant. Will you just create a fishbowl with like a bunch of these questions in them for people to use?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're using ChatGPT now
Oh gosh.
to come up with questions like to ask.
Yeah.
And it's really funny. We came up with one. So imagine like you've never met this person, and the first question you ask them was is would you date me and why?
Oh jeez.
Yeah. So, but like, and like it runs the gamut. Like, there's all sorts of funny questions that are coming out of it, and
Yeah.
it should be a good time.
Mm.
Should make things nice. It should make things nice and awkward.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, I think just it's growing exponentially. I think it's growing faster than I think that's the part I'm hesitant about, is that it's growing too fast for us to keep up and we don't know what it will turn into. And so we can say it will stay.
Once
I don't know.
once they start having emotions, that's when we're gonna have problems.
I don't want to work for you.
Right. Right. Yeah. Once they start fighting back, we're gonna have some issues.
Yeah, I mean, who says it can't turn violent? I don't like.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Right. There's tons of movies about this.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we don't know.
Yeah.
And anyone that says like they do know, they're lying, because we don't know.
Unless they do know.
Unless they do.
In the industry.
Yeah. Those are the people that they know. They're telling you that it's not going to happen because they know it can, and they're just trying to reassure you.
But you hear a lot of that. Like, even I never watched that documentary about social media and Facebook and stuff, and that interviewed like a bunch of people who work there, and
the social experiment,
social network or something.
Yeah.
And
I watched it.
They said like we knew what we like. That's the crazy part, is people knew what they were doing.
Yep.
I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, this goes across the food industry. People, they're scientists to make things taste better, make you addicted to it, even though it's not healthy for you. And they know what they're doing. And that's the same thing that's going to be happening here with technology. It's like they know that it's not good for us. Certain things aren't good for us, but they're still doing it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
And the people that argue that, and like looking back at all those things that you just said, right? It's like, how can you argue that, right? It goes back to all the things, like trusting the government, all these things. Like, how can you do those things? How do you believe that?
Yeah.
Right. The past track record proves otherwise. Proves that our best interest is not kept in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, they made it real evident over the last few years. I think 100%. That. And to each their own. If you don't believe that, that's totally fine. But I think it woke a lot of people up to really seeing both parties, both sides of the political spectrum, that they are not in for your interest.
Both sides of the political spectrum are the same coin. That's the problem. Right? It's right, or it's the right or left arm. It's still attached to the same body. However you want to look at that.
Yeah.
And I think I've said this on an episode before, but people have asked me, well, why don't you trust the government, or why don't you trust this? Like, I don't trust the government because I was in the army when Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Right? Like, that's why I don't trust the government.
Well, it's lack of transparency. And I know they can't tell us everything, but they sure as hell can give us informed consent.
100%.
And so I think that really highlighted, I think it obviously has always been happening, but there's some things that really just highlighted that, for me, lack of trust, Yeah. But it's good. I mean, it causes people, for that to be illuminated is what spawns people to come together, to find ways to survive on their own, and know that they can't, rely on that for their best life, I guess. I don't know.
It's again, right? Like, it's this double-edged sword of, right? It sucks that you have to go through those things, but you do, right? To see, right? You have, right? The darkness balances out the light, and vice versa. And you need both of them for either of them to exist, right? But there's pain in that. and right, and like you have to go through it. You have to see it, and then when you do see it, right, like and a really good example was being in Europe and seeing the history of World War II and the concentration camps that I got to visit, because right, like that's an extreme, but it shows that it can happen, right? Like we had to have this extreme to understand the evil that exists in the world, and for us to be like, we're never going to let this happen again. Hopefully.
But
Hopefully.
that book, The Fourth Turning, I've talked about before, it says that it will always happen. It's a natural cycle every 80 to 100 years. It's just what happens naturally is things fall apart, and then there's a massive war of some sort. And then people want more order, and so then they come back together through more order, and it leads into an enlightenment period. And then people get, life is too good. And then it starts to unravel again.
Yeah. Too much of a good thing is a bad thing.
Or it's just all what it is. It's not good or bad.
It's all judgment. It is all judgment.
Yeah. So
we covered the gamut today. We talked about it all.
I don't even know what we're going to name this episode.
And we didn't really even talk about what we thought we were going to talk about. That's what's fun. That's what I love about this, is we just talk.
Yeah. Hopefully you guys listening love this too.
Yeah. We're just here to shoot the shit. And remember, this is just from our experience. You can hate us or love us. We don't care.
Yeah. We're not right or wrong.
Yeah.
We just are.
Yeah. Like this is another realization that I've had is two things. One, we've been lied to that there has to be a loser, right? I think that's a big one. Is sure, and like competition, right? Like you want to be a fighter, you want to like be a UFC fighter or a boxer. Yes, there's going to be a loser. But on the grand scale of things, like in building my business, in coaching and yoga right now, I'm realizing the better that I am and the better that I can be, the better I can make other businesses too. And like my impact, like with Yoga Junction and Michael's business, right? Like because I'm better, I can help make her better. And same for her, like because she's going to be better, she's going to help make me better. And then same with you. And right, like we're all tied together. And you know, the quote is corny, but rising tides raise all ships. And we can all win.
Yeah.
Right. There is not scarcity. That's a mindset. And right, there is abundance, and we can all have beautiful and amazing things.
But not things that are going to go in a landfill. I'm just kidding.
Yes. Yeah. Stop doing that.
We can all have things, but not more things than you need. I'm just kidding.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. It's a balance. Is I had to, because I lived that life. You lived that life of acquiring things, and I had all the things, and I realized I don't need or want all the things. And then there was something else that I've been thinking about, but I forgot it because I had a brain fart. So anyway, we can all win. There's abundance. What were we talking about before I said that? About
rising tides?
No. Like before I brought this up, when we were closing out, we talked about how we talked about all these things, and I don't know. Anyway.
Maybe it'll come to you next time. Maybe it wasn't as important.
Yeah. Let's breathe and journal and get the hell out of here.
All right.
Bree needs breakfast.
Bree. Well, I have a busy morning, and so if I don't eat now, I won't eat till 1:30.
And I get that. I understand the importance of eating because I get cranky.
So you can, as always, we'll go into breath. And if you can close your eyes and whatever you're doing, take that opportunity to close your eyes. And if not, you can soften your gaze. And if softening your gaze isn't available, then just bring attention inward. And so, whatever you're taking with your eyes, right, allow your attention to fully be in the body and in the breath. Just noticing the natural flow in and out. And then on your next inhale, fill up completely. And then pause at the top of your inhale and see if you can sip up a little more air, filling in the gap. And pause again. And then allow a slow, steady exhale out. And taking this again, breathe in fully. Pausing. Filling in the gap, sipping in a little more air. Pausing again. And then exhale slow and steady. And take this one more time. Filling up. Pause. Fill up even more. And breathing out completely. And returning the breath to normal. And just taking a moment to observe how you feel now. Whether it's changed or not, just being fully present with how you feel right now. And if your eyes are closed, you can slowly open them. And handing it over to Alan.
Thank you, as always. Grab your journal, your phone, whatever it is that you're writing in, and take notes about one, the breath, right? Like how did you feel coming out of that? Because I love that breath. That's a really powerful one, at least for me. But then really look at some of the things that we talked about. The one thing that keeps coming up is, have you traveled to Europe and or somewhere else where transportation is different, right? Like Asia is really different, right? It's not like there's trains and stuff in Asia, but there's also a lot more congestion with vehicles, and then you have motorcycle taxis and tuk-tuks and right, like it's a very, and like talk about safety, like safety goes out the window. Like it's like safety ninth in a lot of Southeast Asian countries, right? So right, like just take notes about that, and what is it that maybe you're holding on to. For me, like I have a big truck and I love driving my truck here. Right? Like it comes with some sacrifice. And maybe it's our ways of thinking around that, and just write about like how you feel there and what your thoughts are on transportation, and where could you go and who could you visit if public transportation was more accessible here. Would you do more? Would you do less? And that initial like gut reaction, knee-jerk reaction, that like, oh, right, like only crackheads ride the right, like the public transportation. Sure, there's some truth to that, but what exists in good public transportation? And then also, right, like if you have any info or knowledge about how to save storage, write that down and then send it to us because we need it. That one's a selfish one. But yeah, get it all out there. And remember, free flow, just write random thoughts, write random words, just get it out. We just sometimes have to let our thoughts flow freely onto paper and get it out. And yeah. with that, it's been awesome talking with you and good chatting.
Until next time.
See you, Brie.
Bye.